Sometimes we believe life owes us time, that tomorrow is guaranteed, that there will always be a later waiting patiently for us to decide when to begin. But time makes no promises. It only moves forward. This is the story of two people who grew up under the same sky, breathed the same air, and heard the same warnings, yet chose very different paths. Their names were Elias and Bruno. They weren't brothers, but they could have been. Neighbors since childhood, classmates, keepers of small secrets and big dreams. If you saw them sitting together, laughing without worry, you would never imagine that time itself was watching them closely, silently recording every decision. Elias always seemed in a hurry, not a nervous hurry, a conscious one. He woke up early, even when no one asked him to. He had learned to love the quiet of the morning, that moment when the world demands nothing but promises everything. Bruno, on the other hand, was a friend of 5 more minutes. He believed life was flexible, that the clock could adjust to his tiredness, his mood, his desires. "Relax," he always said. "Life isn't going anywhere." Elias smiled, but said nothing. He had understood something he couldn't quite explain. Every day lived without intention is a day that never returns. They attended the same high school, same teachers, same assignments, same opportunities, but not the same choices. While Elias wrote down deadlines, divided his time, and started assignments the day they were given, Bruno trusted his memory and his luck. "I work better under pressure," he said proudly. "That's when I'm creative." What he didn't know was that constant pressure doesn't sharpen talent, it wears it down. Elias's father, Don Raphael, used to say something that echoed like an invisible warning. Time is neutral. It doesn't reward or punish, it only reveals. Elias heard those words while helping in the workshop. Bruno heard them through the window and then went back to his screen. The years passed quietly, as they always do. One Friday afternoon, the principal announced a special program, a full scholarship for an intensive course outside the city. Only 2 students would be selected. The news spread like wildfire. Elias went home and opened his notebook. Bruno went home and turned on his console. "I'll look into it later," he thought. "There's plenty of time." That night, while one organized his future, the other gambled on chance. And time, patient, silent, watched. No one loses time all at once. It's lost slowly, with every "I'll start tomorrow," with every reasonable excuse, with every promise left unkept. Elias worked in silence. Bruno dreamed with open eyes. Both believed they were doing the right thing. Only one was paying the real cost. And this was only the first crack. Time is kind at first. It lets you believe nothing is wrong, that you can delay, postpone, improvise. But there comes a moment when it stops observing and starts asking. The scholarship wasn't just a prize, it was a door, one of those doors that never appears the same way twice. Elias understood that from the beginning. He researched requirements, spoke to teachers, requested recommendations, not because he was perfect, but because he had learned something simple. Preparation doesn't guarantee success, but lack of it guarantees regret. Bruno, meanwhile, kept trusting the charm of the last minute. He said there were still weeks left, that there was no need to exaggerate. "They haven't closed applications yet," he said. "Relax." Elias nodded and kept working. The days began to reveal clearer differences. No tragedies, no dramatic failures, just small signs, the kind that seem harmless until they pile up. Elias slept better. He had a routine. There was fatigue, yes, but also peace. Bruno stayed up late, woke up rushed, lived with the constant feeling of being late for something, even if he didn't know what. One Monday morning, the literature teacher returned their essays. Elias received a clear note: good time management, mature ideas. Bruno received a low grade, not because he lacked talent, but structure. You can write, the teacher said, but you submitted something unfinished. Bruno smiled awkwardly, promised to do better next time. Next time. Always next time. That afternoon, Don Raphael invited Bruno to stay for dinner. He didn't do it often, but something in his eyes suggested intention. "What have you been up to lately?" he asked calmly. "Good," Bruno replied. "Everything's fine." Don Raphael didn't push. He simply said something that sounded casual. Time is not lost when you rest. It's lost when you avoid. Bruno said nothing, but the words clung to him like invisible dust. The scholarship deadline crept closer. Elias had everything ready. He reviewed, refined, adjusted. Bruno felt a different kind of pressure, not external, internal. One night, he opened the application form, read the questions, closed the tab. Tomorrow with a clearer head, he told himself. But tomorrow arrived with distractions, messages, invitations, fatigue. And without noticing, time shifted from silent ally to impartial judge. The final day arrived without warning, as it always does. Elias submitted his application in the morning, took a deep breath. He didn't know if he'd win, but he knew he had done his part. Bruno remembered the deadline as evening fell. His heart jumped. He turned on his computer. The clock read 7. "I can make it," he thought. "I always do." But speed doesn't replace preparation. The questions felt harder. The words didn't flow. Every answer sounded incomplete. At 11:50, he clicked Submit. Blank screen. Applications closed. The silence was brutal. No shouting, no drama. Just a deep, uncomfortable, irreversible feeling. It wasn't sadness. It was awareness. The next day, Elias said nothing, didn't ask, didn't celebrate. Bruno didn't speak either. For the first time, he understood something no one can explain for you. Time doesn't punish, but it doesn't wait for you to realize it either. There are mistakes that hurt immediately, and others that weigh on you later. They make no noise, they don't announce themselves. They settle in your chest and stay there, reminding you of what you avoided. Bruno thought the feeling would pass, that he could just move on, as always, but something had shifted. He could no longer say later so lightly. The scholarship results were published a week later. Elias's name was on the list. There was no surprise, only confirmation. The hallways filled with congratulations, pats on the back, looks of admiration. Elias thanked people humbly, uncomfortable with the attention, but proud of the work. Bruno watched from a distance. He didn't feel envy. He felt something worse, clarity. He knew exactly when he had lost that opportunity. It wasn't the final night. It wasn't the late click. It was every small later, every reasonable excuse, every promise left unkept. Elias didn't talk about it, but his silence wasn't relief. It was a mirror. One afternoon after school, Bruno walked alone to the park, sat on a bench watching the sun sink slowly without asking permission. He thought about all the times he had said time was on his side, and for the first time he wondered if it ever had been. His phone vibrated, a message from Elias. "Are you okay?" Bruno typed and deleted 3 replies. Finally he answered, "Yeah, just thinking." And it was true. Thinking had become unavoidable. That night, Don Raphael found him awake in the kitchen. The clock read nearly 1 a.m. "You can't sleep," he said, not a question. Bruno shook his head. "Do you know why time hurts when it leaves?" the man asked, pouring 2 glasses of water. "Because it can't be recovered, but it can be understood." Bruno gripped the glass. "It's not losing the scholarship that hurts, it's losing myself," he admitted. Don Raphael looked at him for a long moment, then nodded. "That pain isn't punishment, it's a signal." The next few days, Bruno tried to change. He really tried. Woke up early, opened notebooks, wrote lists. But inertia is powerful. 2 days later, he slept in again. On the 3rd, he postponed once more. And the blow was even heavier. Because now he knew. And knowing without acting hurts twice as much. Elias, meanwhile, prepared to leave. The scholarship meant weeks away from the city. He packed books, clothes, notebooks. Every object had a purpose. Bruno watched in silence. "Aren't you afraid to leave?" he asked one night. Elias thought for a second. "Yes," he said, "but I'm more afraid of staying the same." The words landed like a stone. Departure day arrived quickly, too quickly. Elias boarded the bus with a mix of excitement and nerves. Bruno said goodbye with a short, tight hug. "Make the most of your time," he said. Elias smiled. "That's the plan." When the bus disappeared down the street, Bruno stood alone. The city noise continued, indifferent. For the first time, there was no distraction strong enough. Time was no longer asking questions, it was demanding answers. And Bruno understood he could no longer run from a simple truth. Change doesn't come from intention, it comes from action. Change rarely arrives loudly. It doesn't shout, it doesn't knock down doors. It comes quietly, when you can no longer continue the same way. The days without Elias felt long, not because the house was empty, but because Bruno no longer had anyone to compare himself to. Without a mirror, there was no excuse. Mornings became uncomfortable. The alarm rang, and for the first time, Bruno didn't turn it off immediately. He stared at the ceiling, thinking, not about who he wanted to be, but about who he was becoming. One morning, he went down to the kitchen early. Don Raphael was already there making coffee. They didn't speak for several minutes. Finally, Bruno said, "I don't know where to start." Don Raphael didn't look up. "Start today." Nothing more. Not a lecture, not a long piece of advice, just a direction. That same day, Bruno did something different. Nothing dramatic, nothing heroic. He put his phone in a drawer. The silence was uncomfortable at first, then strange, then clear. He sat at the desk, the same desk he had used as an excuse so many times. He took out a sheet of paper, wrote 3 things. Only 3. No grand goals, no impossible promises. Small actions, concrete, today. He finished all 3 before noon. He didn't feel euphoria, he felt something better, respect. In the afternoon, he went for a walk. No music, no screen. For the first time, time wasn't running ahead of him. They were walking together. That night, he wrote another list, 3 more. And without realizing it, he stopped running. Not because fear was gone, but because he understood something essential. Fear isn't defeated by waiting, it's crossed through action. The following days weren't perfect. He failed, he doubted, he wanted to return to what was easy, but he wasn't the same anymore. Every time he postponed, he felt the weight immediately. And every time he acted, even imperfectly, he felt relief. Don Raphael watched quietly. He knew this kind of change isn't applauded, it's protected. One afternoon, Bruno found an old watch in a drawer. It didn't work well. It ran slow. He took it to a repair shop. "Is it worth fixing?" he asked. The watchmaker looked at him. "That depends," he said. "What do you want it for?" Bruno smiled for the first time in days. To remember. That night, he wound the watch, placed it on the table, and listened to the ticking. It was no longer a threat, it was a reminder. Time hadn't stopped, it never does. But for the first time, Bruno was walking with it. Time doesn't announce endings, it simply arrives. Elias returned one autumn afternoon. He carried fewer things in his backpack and more silence in his eyes. Not exhaustion, depth. He had learned, and learning always shows. Bruno waited for him at the door, not with anxiety, but with calm, a new calm. During dinner, Elias talked about the course, the people he met, the mistakes he made. He didn't list victories, he shared processes. Bruno listened closely, not comparing, learning. Days later, the school organized a literary showcase. Students could read their own work publicly. The literature teacher approached Bruno. "I've noticed a change," she said. "Would you like to read something?" Bruno hesitated. Fear appeared, right on schedule. But this time, it didn't decide. "Yes," he said, "I would." On the night of the reading, the room was full. Parents, teachers, classmates. Bruno stepped onto the stage with the watch in his pocket, not to check the hour, to remember the cost. He breathed. "My piece is called The Day I Stopped Running," he began. "It's not a story about time, it's a story about choosing." He spoke about excuses, broken promises, opportunities that don't return. But he also spoke about starting late and how late doesn't mean impossible. When he finished, the silence lingered longer than expected. Then came the applause. Don Raphael didn't clap immediately. He stood and embraced his son. He didn't say, "I told you so." He said, "You arrived." That night, Bruno wound the watch, placed it on the table, and turned off the light without making promises for tomorrow. Because he had learned something that can't be taught with words. Time isn't lost, it's decided. And while you can't recover what you left behind, you can honor what you still have. Bruno didn't become perfect, he became present. And that was right on time. If you enjoyed this story, like the video and subscribe. New videos every week. Don't leave it for later.